All right, what's up, family? It's your boy John Bacon from the Bacon Bits Podcast. Thank you so much for your support, likes, and ratings. Please don't just listen, but rate me, follow me, and subscribe. This is an amazing way to offer free support. My beautiful queen and I have some books that we have written for your growth.
So the first book we have is a workbook, actually. It's called Healthy Relationships, and this is a workbook through the lens of faith. Because what makes a relationship healthy or unhealthy? So this workbook is designed, it's a 12-week, it's a biblically grounded course, and every week has a few different principles. So if some of our principles, some of our topics that we're covering are respect, cultivating security. And this is not just between a husband and wife. This is between parents, between siblings, between friends, between your bosses, employers. So it's really important, and everyone deserves a healthy relationship.
And also we have The Balanced Life by John Bacon. It covers how to be prosperous in your finances, relationships, your health, your mind, and your spirit. And we also have
The Unraveling, a creative healing journal, pinings, poems, prayers, and ponderings of my precarious life. I've had a testimony of I've had 2 brain tumors and 2 brain surgeries, and I'm super grateful, but I'm still grieving the process of healing. And this is part of the process. In this book, you have devotionals, you have prayers, and you have some ponderings. And in between these pages, there's a space for you to also be prompted to paint and to create your own, or maybe you want to write something in these books. This is part of your creative healing journal that we get to walk through together.
And you guys can just head over to Kingdom Servants First. Kingdom Servants, the number 1, st.com. And you can purchase all 3 of these books. Thank you for your support, your love, and your contributions. God bless. And so,
So John Bacon thinks he's a super funny guy, and he is. But you know what? Cultivating security, we can be serious, and it can be heartbreaking, and it can be rough, and it can be tough. But it can be exciting. It's another opportunity to bind together what some of our bad choices have broken and fractured.
Welcome, family, to the Bacon Bits Podcast, where we desire for you to take the bits of information and immediately apply them to your life for success. The ground rules for our podcast is that it will always be encouraging, uplifting, and informative. The areas of life that we will be talking about on the Bacon Bits Podcast is dealing with having a balanced life, whether spiritually, mentally, physically, financially, relationshiply, or emotionally. And y'all know I need to hear these words at the beginning of every podcast. Say these words out loud, please. Say valuable information applied equals success. And I am so glad you guys get a chance to hear all those errors and blunders and bleeps and all those wonderful things that happen when we're recording, because we are recording in our wonderful kitchen. So you might hear cooking, chopping, microwaves going off, the coffee pot brewing. We just want to have everyday casual conversations as we are giving you wonderful tidbits of information that can help your life become the best that it can possibly be. And it is that time in the week where I'm talking to the wonderful, magnificent, phenomenal, awesome, beautiful woman that I love and call my queen, Diana Acosta-Bacon. How are you doing?
What's happening, babe?
My baby.
You're my sweet thing.
So what we're going to be talking about this week is cultivating security in relationships. And how do you cultivate security? That's a major question.
Wow. So last time we spoke, it was so funny. It was so eye-opening for both of us. So we spoke about safety and security in relationships. And it was so interesting because as we recorded that last podcast together, we had met with a couple of friends. And it was really, really interesting. And we were just actually having a conversation. And John and I, and then one of our friends, we were all really excited about this one topic. And one of the other friend was like, y'all stop talking about that because you're making me mad. And I thought, and we just kind of looked at each other, and I thought, wow. And I felt really, and he was dead. So this person was dead serious also, realizing he was being, the person was being triggered by something, didn't like what we were talking about. Nothing inappropriate at all. We were talking about camping. But it just made me think how grateful I am that I have a relationships. Thank you, my love, that I'm always able to talk to you about anything without fear of you getting angry. And that was exactly what we had just talked about. Like, do I even feel secure enough in our relationship that it's safe to talk to you about anything?
Yeah.
And that's key. We need to cultivate that. So, this week we're in week 8 in our book, Healthy Relationships, and we get to talk about cultivating security in our relationship. So that was an example. But we've all been there at some point, and maybe an off day for one of us. And, I don't want to talk about that. And none of us are perfect, and we've made mistakes. I am the queen of getting it wrong, but I'm gonna keep trying because everything is figure outable. And cultivating security in relationships is key, especially once we recognize that it's fractured. That I don't feel very secure, whether it is in myself, whether it is at my job, whether it is in my relationship. I don't feel secure, so we tend to tiptoe, and nobody likes to tiptoe around topics of conversation, especially difficult conversations. So we need to learn how can we cultivate, how can we rebuild and cultivate security in our relationships, because it's not going to just happen overnight. No. And it's going to take a lot of, number one, courage, because it takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable and say, hey, I don't feel like I can talk to you about anything, especially if that person is getting angry with you about certain things or taking it personally, right? I think our last conversation we talked about Miguel Ruiz Diaz's book. Miguel Ruiz, I don't know if his last name is Diaz, I forgot. It's Miguel Ruiz's book, The 4 Agreements, with don't take anything personally. But to realize part of our intentional listening is like, I'm here to hear your heart. So how do we do that? It's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to take courage, and we have to be vulnerable with each other and say, you know what, hey, I'm coming from a place of, hey, I maybe I'm the one who's getting upset and angry because things are happening at work, and I'm stressed when I come home, and I shouldn't have taken it out on you. So therefore, I need to apologize. Either way, it's vulnerable, and it's going to take some courage.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is, you have to navigate through. If you've had, I was trying to just glance over while you were speaking, how many relationships I've had before I got married the first time. So you're talking about at least over a handful of relationships, and obviously none of them worked out. And to think about, what were some of the common denominators in those relationships? Obviously it was me, but it was also thinking about what was those things that kept drawing me. Whether, we didn't set healthy boundaries. We didn't want to be accountable to each other. The integrity, because, I had a wonderful way of drawing out the truth, which means I was lying. And it wasn't consistent. I was all over the place, because I had never seen a healthy relationship, and I'm not blaming it on just that. But it's also when you know what you're supposed to be doing. Are you going to actually be doing that? That's a big part of our lives is we can know what to do, but are we actually doing it? So part of having a security in relationships is being, consistent. I think that's a big one. And also making sure you got healthy boundaries. Even if you don't even know what healthy boundaries are, there's some things that we know we ought to do, whether we've been taught it or not. So I think that's really big.
Yeah. And now in the era of YouTube, and everything's online. Everything is reachable and learnable, and we have access to things that our parents and their parents couldn't even imagine.
Right.
Free, that's being offered, that we can have conversations. There's there's Facebook groups that they encourage one another, and support groups all across this nation, in homes and churches and coffee shops. Create one that fits your need. So this is part of cultivating security in relationships. Begins with us being creative. We have to be creative in the approach, because first of all, there's how many love languages? There's 5 that what was his name? Gary Chapman. Gary Chapman wrote the Love Languages book. Highly recommended.
Yes.
If you're out there, get the book, get the workbook, get the videos, get whatever you can on the 5 love languages. Because not just for your loved one in a relationship, but for your children to know how to communicate best with your children, with your siblings, even with your fellow people at work. It's nice to know how they communicate. So first of all, you're not taking things personally, you're not offended, and you're going to have a healthy relationship when you understand that. First of all, knowing your love language is going to be key in every relationship. So if we're being creative and we want to cultivate, not just cultivate, but we have to maintain. We're talking about sustainability, right? So cultivating security in relationships. What are the 5 love languages? I want to start with that one even. So we have words of affirmation. We have gifts of service, gifts, quality time, physical touch. And now there's a new love language in the era. I don't know if you knew about this, babe, but it's TikTok. People love to send TikToks to each other. That's one of my love languages right now.
Right.
Hey, I love you if I'm sending you, 5 or 10 TikToks. Maybe we haven't spoken for a couple weeks, but you got a TikTok from me. Or even text messages. People aren't having conversations anymore. They're not having conversations, and your phone rings and people are like, oh my God, who's the weirdo calling me? Send a text message. Hey, I'm thinking about you. Maybe you haven't spoken to them, but you can send them a text message. So cultivating it. We can begin with something easy, like you said, healthy relationships, healthy boundaries. First of all, where are boundaries? We talked about it in the past. We need to be able to articulate what our boundaries are.
Yeah, it's really important.
First, I can't articulate them if I can't even define them for myself. Have I spent time with myself? Do I know myself well enough to say, this is where I am right now? Now, this is not where I'm always going to be.
Right.
This is not someplace I've been, because I've never been this age. Today has never happened.
Yeah.
So I'm learning as I go. My boundaries might be a little bit more narrow today than they were yesterday. Maybe I didn't sleep well. Whoever, maybe somebody worked a very long week. Last week you had a really long 50 or 60 hour week. So your boundaries this week, your bandwidth might be a little bit less, right?
Yeah.
Know our boundaries for ourselves, articulate those boundaries to others, be accountable, have integrity, be consistent. All these are necessary for our healthy boundaries, right? For healthy relationships. People love to call people out. I like to call people up, because I think when there's a standard set, we need to remember that. So first of all, I'm calling myself up.
Yeah.
I'm calling myself up to a standard. I failed in this because I wasn't available to you emotionally, because maybe I was working a lot, and this is something that we can all relate to. Maybe it's just been a rough couple of months, things have all been a little bit weird since COVID for a lot of people in a lot of relationships. Nobody can put their finger on it, but things are different.
Yeah.
People are different, and we can't quite figure out what that is. So let's be courageous and say, you know what? How about we get together once a month? Sure, we'd love to see people once a week, but let's start with once a month so we don't overwhelm ourselves. If you know their love language, that would be great. Maybe ideally pick something once a month that falls under their love language, like words of affirmation. Let's get together, and you know that you're going to focus on ways that they have encouraged. You encourage me, and when I'm around you, I feel like a better person, and I feel better. And I hope that I'm doing the same for you. Words of affirmation are ways to communicate, right? Acts of service. Hey, I'm going to cook you a meal once a month. Maybe these are just really basic ideas. Be creative. Hey, you know what? I see that you're having a hard time. Maybe the person's elderly. I'm going to come and I'm going to cut your lawn once a month. I'm going to do that. Gifts. Show up to the person you love's job and bring them lunch once a month. It starts with something small. Just commit to once a month. Quality time. That's quality time and physical touch are mine. So quality time, like spend time with me. Like show up and be like, hey, you want to spend time together? Let's just go for a walk. We'll go for a hike. We'll just sit and watch a movie together. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Once a month. Chop out 2 to 3 hours and just spend time with the person.
Yes, and I'm speaking to me when I say put that phone down, John, and make sure you're paying attention and being there in the moment. That's really important.
For sure. Physical touch. It doesn't take a lot. We're not talking about sex. We're talking about like you and I work at an assisted living, and some days look like me holding someone's hand for 30 minutes until they're ready to physically get up.
Yeah.
And just holding their hand,
Mm-hmm.
sitting beside them, putting my hand on their shoulder and encouraging them. It doesn't take much. Those are all just really simple examples, but we can be creative in coming up with so many different ones, but we have to be accountable. Be consistent. First of all, if I commit to once a month, put it in your phone.
Yeah.
I have one sweet, darling friend. I love her so much. My friend Nikki. Shout out to my friend Nikki. She is the best. For the last, since my surgery, she has been the only person who shows up once a month. And we put it on our calendar, and one time a month, she shows up and we just sit and talk. We'll drink a cup of coffee. We just sit and hang out. That's all we do. Probably for like 2 to 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then we set the schedule, and then we meet up again in a month. And whether, sometimes we go to lunch, sometimes we stay home. Sometimes we went to my friend's farm and, visited some animals. But we fill each other's love tank. And she is the one that really had to take that step forward, because she's the one who's physically able to drive and pick me up or take me somewhere. And I just she makes me feel so loved and so appreciated. And I, in turn, love her and appreciate her. So she's consistent.
Yeah.
We have to be consistent. Say what you're going to say, and then be consistent.
Yeah.
Use your phone. Everyone in our cell phone, we have calendars. If you want to, she has a book, and she writes it in her what do you call those? Planners. She's a planner, and then she has her cell phone. So we put it in each other's cell phone, and it's just something that make time to build a relationship. Make time to build a relationship. This could be with your child, with your loved one, with a neighbor, with your boss. There's so many ways that we can be consistent. Is the first step. Yeah,
I think as you were saying that, I think one of the things I think that really threw us off with COVID is just because we weren't intentionally spending time with each other after COVID, because we just didn't know how to act. We didn't know how to respond. There's so many barriers, but when we're being intentional about building that safety in relationships, man, the consistency is big. And it could be something as simple as with your family. I know this is one of the lost arts that I think is really huge. And that's sitting down and having a meal with your family, man. If that could be once a day, a couple of times a week, I think that builds security, because they're able to come to you and talk about anything and everything at the dinner table. Put them phones up. Let's sit down and really dialogue about, how's school going? How's your relationships going? How's your sporting events or different clubs that you might be in part of? And then for us to speak to them about, how work is going and, the different things that we have to deal with. So I think part of that security is making sure you're consistently seeing people on a continual basis and being able to be there and speak with them. I think you spoke beautifully about that, babe.
Thanks, babe. So being consistent, being courageous, being vulnerable, helps cultivate. Because if I don't feel secure in our relationship, I don't feel safe to come to you about anything. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important. So not only do we need to be able to articulate our boundaries and be consistent, but we have to have accountability in place. Mm-hmm. So how do we do that? How do we hold each other accountable? One place that is really easy, and it's really quite often already set in place, accountability is set in place at most employers. Mm-hmm. When we go to a job, you have a 90-day review. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know how often some jobs have like a 30-day check-in, have a 60-day check-in, 90-day, or once a year. Mm-hmm. After you've been there a while, they do once a year. And ideally, you want to improve. Ideally, you find some ways, and you don't take it personally when they say these are some places where you know there's room for improvement. Mm-hmm. But ideally, this is part of our communication. This is part of our being courageous enough to be vulnerable to say, well, hey, boss, I don't really agree with that. Well, what about this time? That was one person. Or hey, I appreciate your feedback. Like, ideally have this open discussion like we're having now. Like you said earlier, I love that we're sitting at the kitchen table and we're having a conversation where most wonderful conversations take place in most people's homes are sitting in a kitchen table. So how can we have accountability to do that with our friends? I think it's fantastic because we can easily just put it in our cell phones and show up. Just show up, be there, and don't be offended when they call you out if you don't show up. Yeah, be like, where were you at? You said you'd be here, or be a little courageous and the night before send a text and say, hey, just checking in. We're still meeting tomorrow. It doesn't take much. And don't be offended if someone says, yes, I already told you. Don't get offended. Some people are so easily offended.
Right.
And they feel so attacked when someone is just checking in and confirming. It's not. It's called accountability. And it's also for both sides. It goes both sides.
Yeah. Because, like I said, we really have to work hard at being intentional, man. Because you know how we'll say, yeah, let's meet up. And we'll leave it at that. And I'm like, oh, no, not in this day and time. We literally have to say, pull your phone out. I'm going to pull my phone out. Okay, see what days we have clear. Okay, now let's make this happen, because we're meeting with some friends. Matter of fact, tonight, after this podcast is going to be over, we're meeting with some friends that we, intentionally look at our calendars, meet up with once a month and just go to a different restaurant or something and just have a great time catching up on where we're at in life. And that is one of the most awesomest things that you can do as a couple is be around another couple, and you're dialoguing about the different things that's going on in your life. I think that makes a major difference.
Yeah. And, I think part of being secure and cultivating security in this relationship, it's more than just saying I'm sorry about what happened that fractured this relationship. It's more than just forgiveness and accountability. It also means being and staying honest. So I have to be honest. First, we can't just glaze over what fractured it, right? We can't just glaze over or sweep things under the rug and just ignore it like it's just going to be ignored away. Like time does not heal wounds.
Right,
Doing the work and having conversations heals wounds. And then a little bit of time helps ease the sting. But having hard conversations is important. Having hard conversations is important. If I don't feel safe enough to talk to you, then that's a huge fracture in our relationship. And I need to say, how can I talk to you? The fact I feel like I can't talk to you. And that concerns me because I want us to have a rich and loving and thriving relationship. So how can we do that? So I think it takes us being honest with each other and say, it really, and to be able to say that, again, if you're calling me, dodo head, and I'm saying, hey, that really hurts my feelings, and I'm being honest, and you're saying, it's a joke, get over it, and you keep doing it, well, I'm being honest with you, but honestly, I don't feel secure because you're not listening to what I'm saying. And that's just an example. You would never do that. You say wonderful things about me, and I love it, and I love you, and I adore you. But this goes with our children. Are we listening to the way we speak to our children, for instance? I know culturally there's some nicknames we give our kids that is not okay, that are demeaning, that we talk about their weight, we talk about their abilities or lack of abilities in certain things, and we give them those as nicknames, and that's not okay. And people think it's funny, and they glaze over the child saying, hey, do you not call me that? My name is so-and-so. And the child is trying to communicate, and you're teaching them that it's not safe to communicate or they're not important enough. So this goes on so many levels, not only with family. Holidays are coming. I think it's really important. Even now, people are wanting to change the way that they're being spoken to, their pronouns, and are we secure enough in ourself to be able to call people what they would like to be called? If they have the courage to say, could you please call me this? What is preventing us? How does it hurt us? At what point is it hurting us to call them that? That's what it looks like to cultivate security, so the person can be secure in being able to approach me. Because if I glaze over that or make fun of that person, that's not loving, that is not kind, and I am not trying to mend anything. If anything, I'm excluding them and disrespecting their wishes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all of those, especially the little nicknames that you were saying, are we there, like every time our kids come to us, will we just sit there and listen, not judge it, just take it for what it is, not make faces. That's one of the greatest times to have a poker face, and just make sure you're really allowing them to say what they want to say without you, getting the attitude or, handling stuff the way you used to handle it, because if we are parents in this day and age, we ought to be trying better ways on how to discipline and also be there for our kids, because I think that is really huge, because the older they get, the more time they want to spend away from home. And that's just natural progression. It's not that you've done anything wrong as a parent, but part of kids growing up is more than likely they want to spend more and more time away from home, just to, they trying to learn themselves. They, building up friendships, building up team camaraderie, wherever they may be at and whatever they're doing. And we have to think about, are we going to be there for them? And every time that they come to us, man, literally, I would tell anybody, drop everything that you're doing. And for those few minutes that they're with you, pay close attention to what they're telling you, because it's super important that when they came to you, they felt like they could come to you and tell you about the things that was on their heart.
And that's what cultivating security looks like, is, are we receptive when people tell us their boundaries? Are we receptive when they tell us their hurts? Are we receptive, and are we making the appropriate adjustments to be able to vice versa? So as the holidays approach, part of cultivating security is knowing your boundaries. Now, I'm not going to encourage you to not be with family and loved ones, but the reality is not everyone's going to honor you. Not everyone is going to let you feel safe and secure, and you don't have to be in a place that you are not being honored and you're being barely tolerated. So cultivating security, remember, you have to be secure in yourself. You have to find safety for yourself. If you are in a place that is unsafe, you don't have to stay there. There's many places that you can be safe. So find safety, find your tribe, find your family. In a perfect world, my prayer is that your family would respond and love you and accept you, and trust that what you're saying is what you need as to move forward and build the fractured relationships that have been or do exist in your family, for instance. Have those conversations, but it's okay to pull back if you don't feel safe and you are not secure enough in that relationship.
Yeah. Well, security is really important in relationships, because you got to have people around you that you can be able to go to and tell them anything and everything. I've always had the squad approach, where I always wanted to have at least 4 other people in my life. Thinking about basketball, with a basketball team, you got 5 people that's on the court at all times. So I'm a firm believer that you should have at least 4 people around you. Minimum, if possible, that you can have around you, that you can tell them anything and everything, because one person won't be able to do that for you. It's good to have 3 or 4 if possible, because, some people have families and they got to do what they got to do with their families. But it's good to know that you've got people around you that can be there for you, to give you that security, to be able to let your guard down, tell them everything that's on your heart and your mind. They won't judge you. They love you enough to put their foot up in your beep if you need it, but also enough to be there as encouragement and you're one of your major supporters in life.
Yeah. And when I talk about places that you don't feel safe and there is no security in this relationship, I'm talking about abuse. I'm talking about if you are in recovery and you're going to a home where they are not honoring your boundaries and they are having alcohol and drugs are available in the home, and you are there and you want to be there, but you can't be there for your own security. There's a lot of things that we have to protect ourselves from if others are not willing to stand in that gap, and not everyone will be for you. And to know that, and people will naturally want to protect ourselves from further harm, from hurt, or from danger. So stay consistent and seek godly counsel, seek people that love you, that want the best for you, that will encourage you to be your best, that will call you up and will stand with you, will walk with you, and will support you. And ideally, you could be that person for them too. Find creative ways that we can start cultivating security. Find creative ways for that individual. If it's for a child, find creative ways. Show up, pick them up from school. If it's your boss, show up, see where you can improve. If it's your loved one, pay attention, put your phone down, turn off the music, look at each other in the face and have a conversation. Make time to cultivate and stop taking things personally.
Yeah, with your security, I mean, one of the greatest ways to start having more security in your relationships is, man, let's start off with your relationship with God, man. He wants you to believe him and trust him at his word and what he has said. And then also you got to be secure in yourself. You want to get to the point where that when you speak to yourself, words of encouragement, you know, your goals, your dreams, that you really believe that you can achieve those things. Because, man, having security and knowing that when people speak, their words are bond. So you got to believe people when they say what they say, and you look at their actions of them doing what they're going to do. So security is really big, you know, with God, with yourself, and then with others, you know, because you want to be a person that people can come to you, speak to you, and they know that, you know, that those things that they speak to you, they can be safe and sound with giving them to you, and they'll say stay safe with you. And you're building up a relationship of security with other people when you're able to do that. And you also want to do that vice versa with other people.
Amen. So Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 2 through 5, it says, "Do not be rash with your mouth, and let not your heart utter anything hastily before God. For God is in heaven, and you on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. For a dream comes through much activity, and a fool's voice is known by his many words. When you make a vow to God, do not delay to pay it. He has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you have vowed. It's better not to vow than to vow and not pay." Be consistent. Be accountable.
Yeah, that goes along with people too. Yeah, if you make a vow to your kids,
all of it,
make sure, man, you can keep your word. I mean, if you got to cancel all your other plans in order to keep your word to your kids, your spouse, your friends, man, do those things. Because when it's all said and done, my job that I work at, you know what, if I ever leave that job or they fire me, that job is going to continue to go on. You know, they're going to do what they got to do without me. But that relationship, you might not ever get a chance to get that relationship back. So, man, anytime you make a vow, please keep your word to those other people. But more importantly to me, keep your word to yourself and God, man. Please keep your word to yourself, because we have let ourselves down in so many areas. So sometimes we have to build up the security in our relationship with ourselves back up by being a person that when we speak to ourselves that we're going to do this thing, we ought to do it.
And that's cultivating security. Be creative. We can come up with so many cool, fun ideas to do, and just do them. I love the idea of putting all these different ways that we can cultivate relationships. Make it fun. Mm-hmm. Make it fun. It could be between, like husband and wife. It could be between friends. It could be between siblings, between parents. Let's all sit down and put ideas of things that we can do once a month. Everyone has their ideas. Let's put it in a jar and pull one thing out once a month. This is our day, everybody. So this once a month day, we're going to pull something out and say, oh, this is what we're doing. And that way no one, it's something everybody wants to do. It's going to be, it could be fun. It doesn't have to be like so much work.
Right. And then that thing that makes me laugh is my wife used to always say forced family fun with the kids. But then when we sometime are hanging out with them, they reflect back on the things that they didn't want to do at first, but they really end up falling in love with doing it because it brings back the memories that we shared together as a family.
Yeah. And we cultivated it. And that's the key, is how do we cultivate security? Yeah. Security. Our kids need to be able to feel free to be able to come talk to us about something. And we need to be responsive. Be responsive without feeling offended. It costs me nothing. It affects me nothing. But it's going to help bond the fractures.
Yeah. And just being honest and open, with, and I'm just, got to focus on the kids right now because we got to let them learn hard lessons when they're in the comforts of our home, so they'll be able to handle it better when they get adults. I think that is really important, that there are consequences to some of their actions, and we have to be strong and say, you know what, did you learn from this situation that you were in? That's part of security, is being able to be safe with your parents and say, you know what, man, I blew it in this area, and Dad, I need your help. And sometimes we can't help them. Sometimes they need to have, repercussions from their actions. And that's security, and knowing that, you know what, we can't fix everything. Some things you're going to have to actually go through.
So as we conclude week 8, cultivating security in relationships, make it fun. Be creative. Get a bucket, put a whole bunch of ideas of what you can do with your family. As you can do that with your family, you can do that with your friends, and have open communication with the person that you need to bind that fractured relationship with, and to cultivate a more secure and safe environment for both of you. We hope you have a wonderful week. We are so grateful that you have tuned in to the Bacon Bets. We are grateful that you've joined us at our kitchen table.
Oh, we love you guys so much. God bless.